Dienstag Parshas Vayikra, Tufshin Pe'alef. Brichem Abum Hashem Hashem, Igenshet hat die Graskum Kabum, seine ganze Chusche V'oilam, Hand am das Chiz einer von der Gdol Rabunim, von der Maschpim in Kashrus in Hand der Welt, Harav Agur Yechezkel Auerbach Shlite, Yoshev Rosh Vad, Lechike in Yune Kashrus, KSA, and of the stores as the Mefakera Kashrus of MPGS, and in alle stores in Lakewood, so gewaltiges Christus hat aufgetan als Sefer von Klal Yisrael. Der Handgeschirr sind wir sie der Daily, Rabzev Weintraub, Sachush wie did mit der Handige Magachil, nicht mas Imoi, Rivke, Basar Tzvi Alea Shulam. Der Handgeschirr ist an Charles und Shivis, man beten nicht daran fragen, so da mit Hashem bis Minche, und noch Minche mit Vater Mamsch, gesagt noch Hashu, weil Hashem Charles und Shivis in allen Juni Pesach und Kashrus für ganz Jahr. Wo man das Schiete in die Schir durch Harav Agur im Yechezkel Auerbach Shlite, in Sedan in der Sprache, was alle verstehen in Englisch, die können verstehen die alle Terminologies in Kashrus. Harav Auerbach Shlite.
I just wanted to be makdim a short vart on the parsha in Pikudei, B'Yaklam Pikudei. There's a problem in understanding. We know that every word, Lashon Kodesh is different than any other language in the world, because the Rebbeinu Shleilim created Lashon Kodesh for the specific purpose of teaching Torah to Klal Yisrael. That means that if there's a word in Lashon Kodesh, it has to have a meaning, and the Torah touches up what that meaning is. We know that the word oihel, a getzelt, as I said, a getzelt. A getzelt means that you have a surrounding and you have something on top of it. And the thing that makes it enclosed is called an oil. The problem is this. We learned about the Mishkan, and the Mishkan has three coverings. A Mishkan, an oihel, and a michsei. So, main involvement gewalt meinen that the bottom cover that encloses the Mishkan should be called oihel, because that's the getzelt. But it's not. The bottom one is called Mishkan. Why? Rav Shamshon Fel Hirsch goes to very great length, which I will not at the present moment, goes to very great length explaining every color, every metal, every material that the Torah explains in the Mishkan when it says V'asu li Mishkan v'shachanti b'seicham. It means that means that the Torah is telling you, not only is this Mishkan a getzelt that's going to have a shulchan and a menorah and an aron, and they're going to go bring karbanos, but this Mishkan is a beispiel for a yid. It shlugs for how a yid is supposed to relate to a yid, is Yiddishkeit, and how the Rebbeinu Shleilim views Klal Yisrael. Every color that it says represents Tcheles, for instance, represents Malchus, a certain height. Each of the colors, and it says that it was Sheish Mashzar. Every thread in the urea, in the farhang, had different colors in it, each of which represented certain tchunas and nefesh of a yid. And what the Mishkan represented is coming together with every koyach that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us to be miyached, that ability in the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when you have in the Mishkan, you have the Shulchan, and you have the Menorah, you have the Aron, each which represents different aspects of the way a Yid is Meis Nefesh for Torah and for Yiddishkeit. The thing that brings it all together, that represents the Midas, has to be called Mishkan, because it's not a separate part of it. The top covering, that can be an oihel, but the different parts of a person's personality and the way a Yid goes through to his life every day has to be recognized that this is part of Mishkan. It's part of the way a person establishes a place for the Rebbeinu Shalom, for the Shechina Kaviyachol, to dwell here in this world. One of the most important aspects of a Yid's life is Kashrus, being nizir in Kashrus, and accepting responsibility, not just to look at a package and says, oh, there's a hechsher azah, says, do Yiddish isis, this is not my problem. If there's a problem with it, it's somebody else's problem. A Yid has to know Kashrus is one of the things that reminds us constantly, every time you pick up something, you think, is this going to help me? Is this zugepasst? for what I'm trying to accomplish with my derech of serving the Rebbeinu Shalom. And the balls with this opportunity here is something that is a service to Klal Yisrael, that it's a tremendous, tremendous chus that they have. It's a tremendous chus that we all have to have the opportunity to participate in this forum.
Rabbi Auerbach, we couldn't do it without you. Okay, we'll start with some Pesach questions. It's a question that we go through every year, but we want to know if it's still the same. Plates, bowls, cups, whether it's made out of plastic, whether it's made out of paper, whether it's made out of foam, whether they're waxed or not. Is it a problem for a whole year? Is it a problem for Pesach? Whether all of them across the board are no problem at all?
The only type of paper that is going to be a problem in manufacturing that would make a kashrus problem would be baking sheets, baking paper, the cups that you make for cupcakes, these type of papers, because they have many layers, microscopic layers in them that they've laminated together, and in what makes it grease-proof is actually oil, because they work it into the paper, into the fibers before, and then they form the sheets of paper, and they form either the rolls for the baking paper or the little cups that you put inside for the cupcakes. Those require a hechsher for all year, and they certainly require a hechsher for Pesach. The other items, a paper plate, even a wax plate, a plastic certainly has nothing on the surface or even inside it that's going to be a problem with kashrus. So saifa hot and saifa cold, there would not be any problem. With foam, there's an algemein, I'll just explain so people should know what they are speaking of. Constantly we keep hearing that foam cups have some sort of etarfis in it. Here's what happens. If you look at a foam cup, you'll see that it's made of millions of little balls. And the way, because when they manufacture the styrofoam, it's the manufacturing process produces little balls, and those balls are stuck together in different forms and different densities to make either a cup, sometimes boxes, fruit boxes. They have many, many different things that it ends up as. The problem is that sticking it together is not the problem. It's just that when they stick it in the form, when they form it, if it can easily get stuck to that form, so they put a release agent, they put something so it shouldn't stick to the form. So there's something called stearic acid, which could be coming from not kosher places. Nobody whom I've ever spoken to, you can't say never, you never say never. But nobody that I've ever spoken to, including in the industry, and including in kashrus, and including the people that are making the tumults, have ever seen it lemaisa that it's come from non-kosher. So if a Yiddish geschäft is making it with ashkacha, and you want to give them the parnasa gesundheit, but to say that everything else is treif is not kosher is an irresponsible statement, and it's certainly not true.
And what about the 9x13s, all these baking pans?
It's the baking paper, that's that part, but that's the first thing I mentioned, yes.
What about the aluminum pans? They get sprayed with some type of mineral oil?
Mineral oil, yes. Here's how you make aluminum. When you take aluminum, like anything, any other mineral, the metal that's formed, it's formed into sheets, and it's rolled down in order to thin it out into what it is. It starts off, it's something like the size of this table, and then they roll it and roll it and roll it until it turns into very, very thin, or different thicknesses, obviously. Very thin is the aluminum foil that you have in a roll in your house. Or they can make for the bekelach, or for the 9x13s, it's somewhat thicker. Now, while it's being rolled, obviously it has to be lubricated, because or else the friction would heat it up. Aluminum has a relatively low melting point. The temperature, it'll start tearing apart. So they have to lubricate it as they keep rolling it back and forth. And once it's in a sheet, the way they make it, they have two forms, a form that has the eventual form and something to press it in. So what they do is that the sheet rolls across it, it stamps it down. And just like with those cups, it can get stuck to the form if it doesn't have a release. So they have a released oil. The oil that they use is mineral oil. They don't use other types of oils that can degrade, it can get rancid, it can get verschimmelt. If you're going to use a vegetable oil, or what people are concerned about, a shem minachai, it would go, if it sits together for a long time, it's going to start going bad. And so they use mineral oil, which is very stable and doesn't get ruined, and that is what is used, side for the rolling oil and side for the stamping oil, they use mineral oil. So therefore, it's getting back to your shaila, there would not be any shaila in kashrus in any of these bekelach. The shaila that you would have is whether or not the poskim that you follow are going to require that it be used for, that you have to have tevilah. The problem with if you hold that these kalim require tevilah, then you really, really have to make sure that it's not just a stamp on it, because here's a very, very not well-known law. In China, any contract not written in Chinese is not legal. End of story. Which means that in China, if you write something on a piece of paper and it's not in Chinese, and you say, okay, I now bought your whole geschäft for $5, so it's not, and we know that there's no question, there's a three-way machlekes v'shainim, what's pshat and din and mechus adina. But one thing everybody agrees on is that laws of commerce that you make geschäft, zicher din and mechus adina. That means whether you like it or not, in China, if you have a contract that's not written in Chinese, you don't own anything. You could have paid for it, and the guy will keep your money for sure, but you didn't buy anything. So if you go to a show or you go to China and you give a Chinaman $5 and said, I just bought your whole geschäft, including $20 million worth of raw materials, and now it all belongs to me. So the reason that they would do that, by the way, there's a halacha, hilchis tevilas kelim, that if you have material that's owned by a yid and the guy just manufactures the keli, then it doesn't require tevilah. Because what you do with tevilas kelim is you have to be ma'aleh, you have to raise the level of the keli, that if a guy makes the keli, it is zugechepet, the tumah of the goyish manufacturer, and you have to be ma'alit by being taivalit in the mikveh. But if it starts off as the yid's metal, and the guy just puts it together, so it doesn't require tevilah. However, if all you do is you give a guy $5, I'm not just making this up, by the way, the original guy that made the Enit Tfilas Kelim, Enit Sarch Tfilah, told me that this is what his Rav told me. He said he went to a show, he gave the guy $5, he says with this he bought his whole geschäft. So the problem is that first of all, metaltlin, I mean, learn yeshiva, metaltlin you can't be kind of with money. Second of all, there's something called that umen kind b'shvach kli, which means that when you hire an uman to make something for you, and he makes your keli, until you pay him, it belongs to him. He has a kinyan in the keli, als uman kind of b'shvach kli. So even naniach that the guy might have made this stuff and he might have got this stuff and he did, even if you brought your own materials, if the the guy made the keli, it belongs to him now until you pay him. So all these things together, you need to have a very, very strong and present hashkacha. There has to be someone there to make sure that the kinyonim are made kedas or kedin. And
okay, gloves that are used for food. You have to worry about that powder.
Very, very careful. You have to be very careful, not because of the kashrus of the gloves, but very often the gloves have powder inside. And these powders are certainly starches. They're certainly kidneys, at least. Depending in China, you can never tell whether they get whatever they can get. So if it's cornstarch or wheat starch or some other type of a starch that you have, and it's certainly, you have to be very careful that the box has to declare that it's powder-free. And after you bring it home, since it comes from China, when you open it up, you have to take a handful and check them to make sure, because I know that in MPGS we check Keseder and we find regularly that they have the wrong things marked. So when you buy a powder-free glove, when you get the box home, make sure to check the box inside the gloves, make sure that when you put your hand in, when you take it out, there shouldn't be any white residue on your hand.
Plastic baggies, sandwich bags, throwaway tablecloths, aprons. Is there any issue? Powder starches?
No, none of them use starches at all, and certainly not after the manufacturing process. Anything that might have been used before is certainly destroyed in the manufacturing process. None of these require. I just want to be very, very careful. There are Yiddish geschäften that make their whole year's parnasa on what they sell for Pesach. And there are good, sweet Erlich Yidden that want to spend limitlessly for the Tzarcha Yom Tov, and they feel that they're giving parnasa to another Yid. to recognize that, but that's what you're doing. It's not because you have to. You want to do it gesundheit. Here we're discussing what has to be done. It does not have to be done. There's no halachic imperative to buy these type of products.
Many people take the children chalamoy trips. They like to blow balloons, beach balls, or other type of tubes. Are there any starches in those?
Yeah, that's very common. That's something people that very much don't recognize. I'm not saying you have to know whether or not it's going to end up being a question, because but it's a davar mos for a person to take in their mouth, even if you're not going to swallow it, you're not going to come into it, whatever it is. But certainly balloons are frequently manufactured with starch on the inside of their thing, and you have to be careful of that. You can wash them out and make water balloons before.
It's the same rule that Auerbach said before. There got to be paper towels, napkins, tissues, paper tablecloths. Also, no shayla of any starches whatsoever.
Paper tablecloths, not. Napkins also not. Here's where the gray area comes. When they roll the paper towels, thank you. They put the paper towels onto the roller. It has to kleb sich zu. When the first sheet has to stick to the roller so that they can spin it on. And there are different types of glues that they use when they have that. Chametz is certainly not going to be. Whether or not it's the shayla of kitniyus that it might stick to it, that it certainly is. There's a starch. Here's one of the ways that this all started. Somebody remembered back in Jenet Zeiten when they used to learn science in school that there's an iodine test for starch. And you remember if you put iodine on starch, it turns blue. So somebody took a paper plate and he took paper towels and he put iodine on it and it turned blue. So he said, everything is chametzik. It actually is not. This starch, there's a naturally occurring starch in wood. And what the iodine was reacting to actually was the starch in the wood, not the starch that they added to the manufacturing process from corn or wheat. So even if you try an iodine test, it's going to come out that there's starch, but it's not a starch that's a problem. If you want to not use the last paper that was in contact with the glue, that's not a chumir yisera, you can do that. The first one also, because it glues both ends of that. But not any of the middle sheets have no shayla at all with them.
Hot, cold food doesn't make a difference.
Hot,
Tissues,
cold,
napkins.
no.
New pots. Are there any chashash of oils to shine them to give them a nice finishing touch?
There was at one point in time a strong grade that Farberware, Befrat, not the other ones, that Farberware used alia to shine after they formed the pots. They polished them and they said that they were using shemen min achai, not kosher oils, as a lubricant for the buffing process. I've never been able to verify it. I don't know anybody that actually saw it firsthand. If a person wants to be concerned with it, I don't know how to go about finding out at this point in time how to verify it. It's certainly not going to need more than soap and water, because even if it gets hot, it's a heat that didn't come al yedei eish, and it's an eni ben yomei, and there's no be'en, and the blias which comes from friction. Mechates has it's the keeper. The klipa is on the outside, not the inside, right?
Belsky said years ago that the friction burns out any residue that's left over.
That's okay, but it is again. Yisrael Kadashim Haim. They take all kinds of things. Chashashas. I don't want to say not, but I'll be Allah. There's no. If you come home and your wife already made supper, to sit and say that you're not going to eat it, it's a bigger problem than.
Does dish soap need a hechsher for a whole year? The powders that they use in the dishwashers and the liquid dish soap, does it need a hechsher for a whole year? And what about for Pesach?
So here's the ikar hadin. The ikar hadin of soaps is that once you have something that's nifsal me'achilas kelev, it loses its status b'chlal as any kind of a food or a tam or anything else, and it cannot affect your final product. If something is nifsal me'achilas kelev and you have a very strong stomach, you can sit there with a knife and fork and eat it. It has nothing to do. You don't make a brach on it because it's not royal achila, but it's certainly not a kashrus problem. The soap, when the way that they make soap is they take fat and they react it with lye, they used to use afer, ashes. That's the huge shach in tzadi. But that's how the result of the lye and the fat turns into its called saponification. It turns into an item which dissolves other fats. Almost always, it results in a product which is not roy l'chilas kelev. It's nifsal me'chilas kelev. It's not. There are three dargas in food. There's something that's in achila. There's something that is pogum, which means that a person would not use it. And pogum is the first degree down. And if there are blias that are pogum, it will not affect anything further than that. That means if you have a keli that has blias of something that's pogum, you don't have to worry about what's going to happen later. Then, but that's not, you still can't eat that. It's not a lechatchila, you can't use that. But if you have something that's nifsal me'chilas kelef, without any question, you're allowed to use it. Now, you have two separate shilas. The bir halacha, there's one, I'm sure that you know, the Auerbach used to use rokeach soap to shower, because the bir halacha says that even though something's nifsal me'chilas kelef, it's roy for a bal nefesh to be machmer, not to, since a sicha is harei kishasiya, when you rub something on your body, even though obviously you're not eating it, and there's no iser of ingesting that's going on, but the bir halacha says bal nefesh yachmer, an ogit in the yid is careful that you don't take non-kosher stuff and smear it on your body, even though it's not derech achila. From this, people have extrapolated that not only that, but they don't want not kosher product, something that was once not kosher, on their plates or on their estzig or on their pots and pans. They don't want it. So therefore, a erlich Yiddish zefrei is not going to use soap that doesn't have a hechsher. The hechsher does not go on the manufacturing process. The hechsher only tells you that the oil that they use to start the process does not come from a trefa source. You know, what they do to it afterwards is not that is not something. As long as they can guarantee that the soap is coming not from Shem Minachai, that's what they satisfy themselves with. It is not unusual. It's not common, but it's not unusual for companies to use Shem Minachai to make these products, and I'll explain why. It used to be, and this is again a gewaltige chesed from the Rebbeinu Shalom. When we were young, everybody knew that anything that had oil was chosher, that maybe it has tallow, maybe it comes from animal fat. That's so when we grow up, that was always on our mind, that there's always this oil comes from Minachai. Baruch Hashem, they had that mad cow disease 25 years ago in Europe, and the ganze Welt had sich angeschreckt from Shem Minachai, from anybody. So it's come out, they became the overnight, the market for oil from tallow, from Shem Minachai, dried up, disappeared. So there's a gewaldige chesed for two things. I think there are only two plants left in the United States. Even if you didn't get trefa oil, there was always a problem that they used the same machines, and the machinery that they use for making oil, for refining oil, is very, 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 very difficult to kasher. And there were always all kinds of tzaras. And they used the same steam, and they used the same equipment. Baruch Hashem, when the market for trefa oil went away, all these tzaras went away. So the oils in America, that means the canola, corn, soy, this kind of stuff, it's not been nimsa at all to even find they should share any common equipment, a common steam, common processing whatsoever. But Lamaisa, you have all this oil, they have to do something with it. So they have to find new uses for it. They end up putting it into soap because people don't care. It's deodorized anyway. It's a separate thing. In a tshuva, which is it's Mavel al Ryan. It's a Haflev fella. I don't understand the halacha behind it, but when Reb Chaim Kanievsky gives a psak, it doesn't make a difference if he understands it or not. Somebody came to me in MPJS and said that they have a new type of soap they just put on the shelf. It's called milk and honey. So I said, so what's the problem? He said, because if it has a derivative of milk, and if the oil is coming from Shem Minachai, so maybe it's an Isser Asbachol, it's an Isser Bahana. I said, I called the company, and the company said, it's taka, we use Shem Minachai. So we have here a soap that's made from Shem Minachai and have milk derivatives in it. So it happened to be that my boss, Reb Zev Rothschild, Zechet Tzadik Kodesh Levracha, whose yahrzeit is this Shabbos. He was one of the first of the Karbonos. Chaim said he was a carbon tzibur of this particular Magefa. So there was no playing around. He happened to be in Eretz Yisrael. I called him, and I knew that he was going to Reb Chaim. I said, ask him what we should do. Reb Chaim said, take it off the shelf. Now, if he tells you to do it, you don't ask him, yeah, but. So you do it. But so, if somebody wants to be nizer in soft soap brand of milk and honey, you should know that Reb Chaim said you shouldn't use that soap. But halacha, it's very hard to find him because in Nissan Mechil is Kelev, and it's not derech achila, and it's not derech bishul b'kach. It's only Isser Hano with that, but that was where it is. So you're going to end up with food touching products such as plates, silverware. Stuff like that, stuff they use in your dishwasher, and some people go so far as to put it, they won't wash their dishcloths unless there's a hechsher. Yisrael Kadosh Mehem. You don't argue with people that want to be machmir like that. But is the halacha like that? The halacha is you don't need it. But the hanahaga is that ugly and the people don't use products on something that comes in contact with their food that doesn't have a hechsher.
Okay, the next is more not like a shaila, but more like a hoidah. A lot of supermarkets and hardware stores have mikvois that people, and tvilas kelim by metal kelim is a deraisa.
Yep.
And people don't realize that a lot of these things are without a hechsher, and nobody takes care of it. And even if they tell you it was made by a certain rav, I called up such a rabbonim, and they told me, yeah, I made it many years ago, but I have no idea what's going on there today. So really, before you table something in the mikveh, you can finish the sentence.
I'll tell you, as you did, there was I had to handle with a certain restaurant that was opening up, and they were buying all the kelim from a Yiddish geschäft, and they have a mikveh and they tevel it, and I said, okay, but who built a mikveh? Who's hashkocha? Who's ongoing? They said, Ramina, this Rav. I called the Rav, and he says, I was just on my way out to go check it. I was on my way up there to go make sure that it's taka thing. So I said, when was the last time you checked it? I'm glad I caught you just on the way to go check it again, but when was the last time? I was just there. Meanwhile, so he came back, he says, it's a good thing because I was there and it was taka, chas v'shalom, it wasn't not kosher, but we were meyapeh it and it was better, and Baruch Hashem. It's quite possible that nobody had looked at it in a dozen years at least. And if building it is one thing, maintaining it is very easy. That means that if the store owners would know, that means if people would come into stores and they would say, who maintains the kashrus of everything? Yiddish geschäften b'derech klal are run by ehrliche people who want to do the right thing. And they just don't know. So if you come in and you say, who is responsible for the maintenance of the kashrus? Really? Someone, I'll call the Rav, says, who's doing it? Well, who's doing it? And he'll do it. Because you have to make them aware. The Rav's not going to come back for free and come and say, listen, I built it 10 years ago, I want to check it. But if you're going to come and kisedru, people will come into these geschäften and say, who is responsible for the hashkacha of the thing? So he'll say, okay, I'm aware now that something has to need hashkacha. And they will engage the Rav again to come and make sure it gets done. And as you said, it's a deraisa. People wouldn't use other mikvahs that are necessary for deraisa without knowing that there's a hashkacha, there's episode of Rav's state thereby. So this should be no different. And people, again, the power of this knowledge is in the hands of the Hamoinam, and if they would make use of that power, it'd come to the store owners and further such a thing, it would be done.
And the same thing is that you shouldn't travel at any shul mikvah unless you know that.
It's not. They don't. It was never made. And if it was made many years ago. It's most of them is just for tefillah Ezra, not for tefillah of Kalim.
What's the story with lipstick? Adri works very hard to make good lipstick. He made last year a whole new run. Maybe this year also I wasn't updated, but there are other ones that
there are three different sugim to discuss the benigay lipsticks. First of all, the algemein kashrus for the whole year, and then of both the chaimer that they make the lipstick from, and the color is the second issue. The third issue is Pesach. It used to be very common. It used to be 50 years ago. It was very common that the base, they have to make lipstick. They make a stick, which should be strong enough and hard enough that it's not going to tsagang in the tube, but it's going to be soft enough that when you smear it, it should leave something. It shouldn't shmush and leave a lot. It's a very, very difficult balance to get everything punked right. They used to use tallow. They used to use the faglivit shaman menachai was one of the main ingredients that they used to use. It no longer is. You cannot find that at all. You cannot find tallow being used at all. One thing they do have is they have what sticks together the other oils that they use. They have emulsifiers and have stabilizers, and sometimes those may be a byproduct of something that's not kosher, but certainly will be bottled. Now, you have to understand that Rabbi Yankiv and Rav Belsky said very often, an item which is not a food item, me'ikar din, the halacha me'ikar din is that midaraisa things are bottled chabitray. That's just the way it works. You don't need shishim, you don't need that. You need, there's special gzeiris, there's in Masayim, there's but the ikir hadin midaraisa is beetle is chad betray. Now, the Rabbanim moved it up to being nice tam, because if you hold that Nissan is tam kik is deraisa, so as long as there's Nissan is tam, so you have to be machmer until you know that there's no Nissan is tam. And the Rabbanim Mishayer, that's shishim. But if something is not a food item, and it's not something that you're doing for tam, the ikir hadinis is batal chabitray. So there's no question that in any of these items, any possible tarfus would be batal, not only chabitray, but be'elef. Here's the problem. The problem is that colors come into play. And there is a very strong red color, which is called carmine, which is made from the extract of a certain bug, and a certain beetle. Now, Baruch Hashem, see, they say that everything the Rebbeinu Shalom created was for a purpose. So you have these vegans and these mishagoyim that make geferel chetzaris with shchita. So what possible use could the Rebbeinu Shalom have for them? It says because of these vegans, there's kamat no use of carmine, because they go crazy. Starbucks used to have a certain drink that was like a strawberry, and they found out that it uses carmine for the red. There was such a ton of tishna b'venk. You would thought to beat up a schwarz or somewhere. They went so crazy, and they stopped, and they had to be misvade, and they did tshuva, and they stopped using it, and they threw it all out, and they don't use that anymore. I thank God, because now it's very rare to find it. You can find it sometimes in Europe, because they're not as crazy as Americans, but stuff made in America, it's kamat napinimtza to find carmine in it. That's first of all. Second of all, if carmine would be in it, you have to cheshbon that in order for there to be a problem, what you have to say is that after a woman puts lipstick on, every time she's eating, it's coming off. Obviously, it's not happening, or else it wouldn't be there. No one's going to use lipstick that doesn't stay. So obviously, it doesn't come off. And it stays there.
The glasses have a nice simon on it.
Yeah, because you press against it. So you do. But I'm saying with the food, and so it's shleika derech achila, and it's not daita b'kach, and it's there are reasons. So, however, as I said before with the detergent, people do not want to put something that's not kosher by their mouth. That's just the way it is. I know that my family would never use it. I'm sure I'll get hitting the people. There are different types of. The Advi sells it. There's one that has the sclera hechsher. I don't know the name offhand.
Caroline?
Yeah, something like that. Caroline, Careline, Carelane, from Eretz Yisrael. That is the stuff that sclera gives ashkachdu has no shilas whatsoever with the colors. They also give for Pesach. They also give a Pesach to ensure that nothing of the other starches or any of the other things are a problem. But it's time to go by. It's a shvera zach. Even if something is mutter, if you can get something that is, there's a taz that says concerning medications. I mean, you can shtel too. He says that even though that it's mutter, obviously, if there's a medication, you can take a sheret soruf. You can take something that's mutter to use for medication. He says, but if there's something that's kosher to use instead, the Taz says you don't even start the cheshbon. a Rav makes a cheshbon whether it's mutter or not, but the cheshbon doesn't come to the table if there's something that's mutter. So if you have lipsticks that are taka kosher, and NYC, I think there's another brand that you can use that's kosher.
Chapstick.
The plain chapstick, I was mevar, that is already, that you have to mevar because people need it. The plain unflavored chapstick is not a problem whatsoever.
Pesach and all year?
Pesach and all year. And when people, what about this flavor, that flavor, I say, you know what, I brought the investigation to here. You want to have a flavor, you can go investigate the flavor. It's very, very difficult. The truth is it's almost impossible to investigate a flavor because the company is not going to tell you who makes the flavor, and even if the company tells you who makes the flavor is not going, the company, the hechsher, it either has the hechsher or doesn't have a hechsher. If it doesn't have a hechsher, you've accomplished nothing. If it has a hechsher, the hechsher is not allowed to share with you information about what's in it, and the company certainly won't tell you how they make it, so it's very, very difficult.
Plain Vaseline on the lips?
No question whatsoever. No question.
Even if it touches dishes like
even touches,
Pesach all year.
Pesach all year. Vaseline is verglivete gasoline. So instead of putting it in your car, you're putting it in your mouth, but it's the same thing.
But there's some Vaselines that come with
flavor.
Yeah, that you should.
Yeah, that you should avoid that.
Okay. Lotions on chapped hands and then touching food a whole year. Pesach, you should be more careful because a lot of those could have even chametz.
They could have problematic things, but I just can't imagine the people who use so much that it's going to be enough left on your hands to transfer.
I know when you spray your hands and you wash your hands afterwards, it starts coming off even a few hours later.
It's because first of all, there's a difference that it's the water activates it, it dissolves it.
So if you touch food with it, you should
if you're touching wet things, maybe not, but some food, it's not going to come off on wet food. And even if it would be, I mean, it's not even a shayla mevaten lislechatchila. It wasn't b'daitim. It's something.
Much more careful.
Pesach. If you should wear gloves, but after you use that. But
is there any reason to rinse eggs for Pesach?
The reason to rinse eggs is two, because first of all, the chickens sit on where they lay the eggs, and they say that the eggs fall out, and there's all kinds of schmutz there. They wash it before they send. If you see eggs before they wash it, you wouldn't eat eggs, but they wash it. Usually they'll have an alcohol wash also as a disinfectant. Which doesn't have any incidence b'negei Pesach because first of all, at worst it's kidneys, and second of all, it dissipates, it evaporates. There's certainly no alcohol left. I know that in Eretz Yisrael, where they stamp each egg with the best buy, so there I know that people are makpid in Eretz Yisrael. They wash off the eggs there. But I'm not sure. Maybe before you cook it, before you crack it and use it, you certainly don't have to. Because the only shayla is if Svardim put the eggs in the cholent, in the chamim. But if you cook eggs, it's certain. But the evid, if you don't realize it until afterwards, there's certainly no shayla because there's no way that it could be even approach any level of iser. But if a person wants to be careful before, on Pesach, people like to do things that are not necessary because they might be fine, but there's no reason for it.
A few years ago, I made a tumult that Maimonides, I think today got better, but they had a lot of formulas that were not kosher, and it says in Shulchan Aruch clear you should be very, very careful. I mean, like as goya, and it can affect the child for his whole life. I think maybe they took care of it, but the truth is, every parent, when they have a baby, they should also check the nursery and the hospital wherever they are to make sure that if the baby does get formula, it should be kosher.
Yeah.
But we do get phone calls very, very often from parents that the child has reflux or other issues, and they have to take different formulas. There are those that are, let's say, OUD, which is a halba tzaravi mazakt, and then there's another ones that don't have b'chala hechsher, which certain babies have to take. What are the categories of the formulas, and how does one go about it?
Okay, mekal lekaveh, the easiest ones, the ones that say OUD, that do not contain any actual milchiks like prosoibi, and the soy-based ones, the reason that they're called milchiks, we've gone through this once, and I want to, again, this gamli zachul atayf, the OU takes very seriously their responsibility to the kosher consumer. And therefore, just to digress for 2 minutes, there's a halacha called nat bar nat, which means that if a keli gets an absorption, is baleya a tam. So if there is tam iser, that blia carries forward. That means that if you take a pot and you cook something that's not kosher in this pot, then you clean it out and you wash it out with soap and water, but you don't kosher it, the next thing is also because it has nat bar nat. The first Isur was nice and tam, put tam into the keli. The second food item in there was not bar nat, it was nice and tam into that. Not bar nat the Isura, if the item that got absorbed into the keli was Usur, it retains that Isur and it keeps going forward. If there's not bar nat the Hatera, so it becomes neutral. So what all other agencies do is they call it DE, they call it dairy equipment. Now, 99% of the people have no idea what that means. And all it does is cause confusion. Oh, it's not dairy? Okay, I'm going to eat it together with my child. And if you hold that non-Chalav Yisrael, if you hold non-Chalav Yisrael is an Iser, that means that if you make a formula that has dairy in it, and it's an echt milk thing, so the kalim are milchik. So if you hold that non-Chalav Yisrael is Iser, that means the next product made there is Iser. So you can make a cheshbon, DE, if you don't know what that means, you can end up using it, and you hold maker din that it's also, so you couldn't use. So the OU hat sich eingestellt, they're facing a tremendous amount of financial pressure because of that, because everybody else uses DE, and it's easy for the companies. The OU, they're beginning to buckle a little bit, but they still put in a D, but to tell you that, listen, this was used with non-Chalav Yisrael. If you want to be machmer, you should know that this product is not for you. Now, that being said, when you have the formula, the production equipment that they use is made hot. If you have a keli that's an Eini ben Yoimei, there is a strong time. I'm not saying that this is how you make a milkshake in your ice cream store, but if you have a baby that has a need, Meikavadin is not really milking. And they sanitize it. Now, does the sanitization reach up to a level of koshering? Some shittas yes, some shittas not, because there are different shittas, but certainly, almost always, it goes above kabbalah kach poltei. The ikar hadin, Rav Belsky said many times here at this shir, that the ikar hadin of koshering is kabbalah kach poltei. That means that if you cook something at 150 degrees, 160 degrees, and then you kosher it at 170 degrees, mikar hadin is mutter. Now, the halacha is that you need mayim reisachim. Why? Because these are dinim that are given over the nitin b'yad koil, and you don't have a thermometer, you don't know how much it was, you don't know how hot it was when you cooked it, you don't know how hot it is when you kosher it. They say, you know what, if it's more than yad seildes, you need mayim reisachim, because yad seildes means that it's hot, and reisachim means that it's cooking, that's what you do. But it's more than mustafa that it was kosher. So if a person has a child that needs these type of formulas, and there's nothing else to give them, there's very, very strong tzad. A person has to consider very well if the doctor prescribes a certain type of formula because it has certain nutrients or certain milas, and it has an OUD, but it's only shayla kalim. You should have to be you speak to your Rav very carefully before you say, no, it's not for me. At the other end of the spectrum, there's something which Zikr has stuff that's not kosher. There's stuff like deuterogen and augmentum. These things are used because if a child, sometimes the child doesn't have in the digestive, they don't have the enzymes that are necessary to break down proteins. So what they use is they use what they call a pre-digestive enzyme. They take enzymes and they treat the milk, the formula with this enzyme so that it's already digested, and then they prepare it for the child. Then the child can take it and it's already digested. The problem is that those enzymes are taken from the pancreas of a not kosher animal. Now, that's true. Is zicher botel ba'alfi alofim? There's no question, and they're not mevatel b'shvulcha. There's no iser mevatel nislechatchila here. There's no question. So, what is the question? What is everybody's concern? The concern is that you have something that's called a dovra maimid. A Dovra Maimid is not bottle even about. The classic case of Dovra Maimid is where you put something into cheese, something that forglives. Milk Yeah? When you make milk, you make cheese. So you have a pot of milk, you put in, thank you very much. Thank you. You put in the rennet, you put in the item that's for glyphosate, you come back in an hour and it's solid. What happened? Before it was a liquid, now it's a solid. That's a maimed. It comes out a couple of things. When they used to be maimed either with a keva, that's a whole separate shaila, but even they used to use the sraf, they used to use the sap of a tree, certain trees would be maimed, so if the tree is arla, there are all kinds of interesting shilas about it. But the halacha is that a dover ha-maimed is not bottle, and it's a very pashta. There are a couple of things that even if you use them in elfei alofim are not bottle. One of them is dover ha-maimed, the other is something that's avid l'taima, if it's made for taste, or chazusa for color. It's pashta. Color is the easiest one to understand. You have a big vat of water, and you take this carmine, let's say we were talking about before, yeah? And you put in 2 drops, 3 drops in this huge vat, and it turns red. You go, oh, it's a bottle. What do you mean bottle? It's red. What do you mean it's a bottle? It can't be a bottle. It's right in front of your face. You're going to say that if you use a keva of nevela to make cheese, it's only one in 1,000. Yeah, but you have cheese. How can you say it's a bottle when it's right in front of you? If you put something, the ingredients that they use in compound flavors are parts per million. They put in mamish, a kimish, not even with a spitz guppel. They don't have what to say in English what a small chair. Yeah, but you taste it. If you want to taste like cherry, you taste like cherry because they put in this chemical. You want to taste like grape, you want to taste like bananas. They're using these chemicals. So some zavidal time, you can't simultaneously say that it's bottle while you're sitting there and you're tasting this flavor. It's the same thing here. There are those that want to say the possibility that when they take the milk protein and they add this enzyme, it made a difference in it. It pre-digested. Now, the people that are matir say that, yeah, but you can't see it. In other words, the whole Dovra Maimed has to be something that has a physical. This doesn't have a physical impact. It just means that the baby can digest it easier because it breaks up the enzymes inside the protein molecules. Akapara. Okay. So that's why it's made in kosher plants, and the OU makes sure that all the other stuff except for this pancreatin, it's called, is kosher. And if people later need augmentum or they need nutrimogen, something like that, there is a gazillion stadim in halacha for a person to take the child and deny him opportunities to use this, which is a very nourishing thing. It's not a simple thing.
Is ascorbic acid and vitamin C a problem of chametz?
Here's where they make kamat all vitamins today are made with something called fermentation. Fermentation is they take a starch slurry and they inject it with various bacteria or yeast, different things, and when the simplest mushal we recognize every day is wine. Wine starts off as grape juice, right? It's a very heavy sugared juice. There's a natural sugar in the grapes, and then you take yeast, you add yeast to that grape juice, and the teva of yeast is that it eats sugar, and from that sugar it creates carbon dioxide and alcohol. As a matter of fact, if you walk into a bakery and you see when they make a dough, if you come there after it's been rising for a while, it smells like alcohol because that's the alcohol. And by the way, the carbon dioxide, that's why you have fluff. The difference between a matzah and a bread and a challah is that matzah lays flat, it has no yeast. There's nothing to make air bubbles in the dough, but when they put yeast into a challah dough, it eats the sugars, the carbohydrates, and it makes these little bubbles of carbon dioxide. And then when you bake it, it has all. That's why it's fluffy. The same way that the yeast eats the sugars, the starches, and makes alcohol and carbon dioxide, there are many, many, many different types of yeasts and bacteria that will consume the growth media, the starches, and make enzymes, make vitamins, make acids, certain types of essential amino acids, things like that. So nifl dikabriya, a person, every time you go through this, your head can explode at these mishigoyim with the evolutionists. There's not, the world is such a fantasy land of nifloyes and the Rebbeinu Shalom, the Zayba Schaffen Welt with such nisgovidik milas and beauty. So one of these things is it makes these things. So most of this stuff being made in China now. We'll talk about that later, but certainly you have to be concerned that unless you know what the media is that's being turned into, it's very difficult to say that it doesn't need a hashgacha on Pesach.
Is any mice poisoning or cockroach poisoning, or it usually comes in pellets, and it comes like it does taste good for them, but they have mixed into it poison. Does that make the whole thing like nifsal, or?
It's a. First of all, it's not clear to me that anybody has tasted it. If a person eats rat poison to see if it tastes good, l'chura his edus is a shtickle, vakeldik in the first place. Mech tasted that the guy, somebody tasted it's certainly. I have no idea how to respond to that. It is not. Is it considered a food item? No. Is it something that you can't keep in your house? Yizichik can keep such a zach in your house. To say that there's a chash chametz. First of all, if something's less than a kazayis, there's no issa bali rabbi masa. The only reason you have to make beer after bedik. You have to make bedik and you have to make beer. Is shemen nimsa gluski yofa. So mistama, even if a person is very, very careful, if you find a gluski yofa of rat poison, they're not going to eat it. So make your din, you don't have to get rid of it. And I just. Yeah.
In the past, we spoke about like Gatorade, Powerade, vitamin drinks, and the Auerbach said that other than the issue of that you made on a hot process, the flavorings are not a problem.
Right.
Last year, when this matzav happened, and we were getting shilas of a lot of people dehydrating, so we did research and we found out that it was made only with kidneys, and we mattered to a lot of people on Pesach.
Right.
Is it the same now?
It is. However, but one thing you have to be careful. There are a couple of different drinks that people assume everything, the entire line is kosher. One of them is Gatorade. They have a non-kosher product.
Oh,
it's a white one. What?
Snapple.
Snapple. That's what I was getting to. Yes.
No,
and not only does Snapple have treifus Snapples that look identical with the other ones, but if you buy a variety pack of Snapple, it always has the non-kosher one in there.
I'm not saying that Snapple is good.
I understand. I'm saying Costco, for instance, has variety packs, and these big box stores sell variety packs, BJ's, of Snapple. They always have the treifus stuff in there. So a person has to be very careful.
And Bechlal with these drinks, are they Lechatchila or not?
The items that they're made of are not. Well, Snapple has a problem that Snapple doesn't own their own bottling, so they take. There's one of the biggest soft spots in manufacturing kosher products today in America is that many kosher productions do not have their own production facilities. The huge companies. Like Hellman's, Heinz, these things, they make their own products in their own plants. But when you would think Snapple would be big enough. Snapple is not. Actually, they manufacture wherever they can make it. Now, Snapple is manufactured hot, which means that you have to have a good koshering before it's being made. Because you don't know since it's not your plant, you don't know what they made last. You have to make sure that there was some form of koshering before there. Snapple, the hashgacha, has worked out with the companies that they're supposed to do a double boil out, double rinsing with hot water before they make Snapple. And when they make it on Shabbos, the mishkiach will come sometime in the future and check to make sure that the protocols were actually followed. So
However, the Powerade, Gatorade, vitamin water, are those different, better?
They probably share the same problem, which doesn't make it doesn't make them usher. It doesn't make them bad. But if a person can do without it, or only wants to be able to use something that he knows, there are many people that will say, "I'm only going to use a product if I know there's a mishkiach tzmiti there." Why? Because it's hard to impeach such a type of a concept. Because you have things that happen. Things always happen. Now, b'diavad is it mutter? Yeah. If people would know how many things are paskendom b'diavad, And I'm not talking about in the OU or the Chavkei. I'm talking about in Heimish products also. How many things happen and you realize suddenly this, that. Listen, that's what a Shulchan Aruch is for. But at least if a person says, I only want to use something with Zimashkiach, I'll tell you the truth. 33 years ago when I started working at the OU, it never came in betracht to kasher a plant without a mashkiach present. There's no such thing. It's now. It's not like that by any.
Arizona, all these are the same. Arizona drinks.
They, you know.
And you always tell me, besides grape flavor.
Yeah, it is. You're asking if it's kosher. You know, but people are gonna, you know, it's if I would know that the other stuff is better, it would be better. But you know, it is certainly up halacha. There's not a question that it's going to it passes muster.
Which sodas with the national Hechsher are good lechatchila, like Coca-Cola, Sprite, ginger ale?
On Pesach or all
No,
year?
no, whole year.
Coca-Cola is perfectly fine. Pepsi.
You're talking about plain Coca-Cola.
Plain Coca-Cola.
Pepsi,
Plain
or
Coca-Cola. Plain Coca-Cola and Diet Coke. Plain Pepsi and Diet Pepsi and plain Sprite. Ginger ale. Schweppes ginger ale is fine with or without a K on it. That's in the United States. Pepsi is different than Coke. Coke manufactures they manufacture it in 4 steps, and they are meshuga of tight. They don't even let their own employees from one division work with the other ones because that's the thing. Pepsi is a lot more practical, and Pepsi manufactures their stuff whichever country that they manufacture. It means that if you pick up Coke in the Ukraine, it's manufactured. The essence and the flavor and the concentrate is manufactured by Coca-Cola. It's just made in thing. Pepsi is manufactured there. So that's
Coke
why
in Mexico and Ukraine is good, or I hear this.
I happen to know that in Mexico and the Ukraine it is good. If you call the hechsher, they'll say you have to have our hechsher on it because that's what they say, but it doesn't mean it's not kosher. It is actually kosher.
Before a flavored seltzer needs a hechsher.
Absolutely needs a hechsher. Something with a K should not be found in a Yiddish person's home unless he knows who the person is. Absolutely not. And even if it's made in one place, that's what they say. Yeah, that this guy, the stuff with the K, vintage. The guy, it's not a hechsher, it's not a real hechsher, but it's made in a place that other people see. It's simply not true. It's simply not true. It's not responsible. It's not responsible. It can change in a minute because they're doing what we call it's called contract manufacturing. So if they get a better contract somewhere else, they'll move it somewhere else. It's not responsible at all.
Frozen orange juice, frozen apple juice, or national Hechsher on these, are they enough, or it's...
It is enough. Yeah. There is not really a level of concern with the concentrates themselves. The only problem that you would come across is not with an ingredient problem, is that maybe it shares a concentrator with grape, which maker din is mutter.
Apple cider, not apple cider vinegar, apple cider juice.
Apple cider is a fermented product. Apple cider is apple juice that was treated with a...
Any OUs?
No, I mean, well, that's draft mincha, like the whole drink.
Shkoyach b'shem Yechezkel, I'd like to thank Rabbi Auerbach for the first part of this year. Right after mincha, we'll continue chelik sheni. Mincha. Kaddish later. Mincha.
That's how you always say. It's not but